Shifting your wardrobe from summer to fall can sometimes be tricky. Luckily, Quince offers timeless and high-quality items without making you blow your budget. That's because Quince partners directly with top factories, so they cut out the cost of the middleman and pass the savings on to us. The oversized cashmere cardigan I got from Quince is such a cozy, stylish, and well-made piece. Make switching seasons a breeze with Quince's high-quality closet essentials. Go to quince.com/weirdest for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/weirdest to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/weirdest.
At Popular Science, we report and write dozens of science and tech stories every week. And while most of the stuff we stumble across makes it into our articles, we also find plenty of weird facts that we just keep around the office. So we figured, why not share those with you? Welcome to The Weirdest Thing I Learned This Week from the editors of Popular Science.
I'm Rachel Feltman.
I'm Amanda Reed.
I'm River Peterson.
River, welcome to the show. So great to have you.
Woo! Thanks so much for having me. It's so great to see you again here virtually. I know everyone else is just going to be hearing this, but I get to see you, and that's a real bonus for me.
Likewise. And would you tell our listeners about the amazing stuff you do at Mid-Mountain and the very exciting special event you have coming up, which is my excuse for having you on the show, though I'm sure I'll come up with another one sometime soon.
Well, fingers crossed for many, many excuses. But this time, the excuse is that I am one of the curators at Mid-Mountain. It's an arts and agricultural retreat space, a nonprofit out in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. We were so lucky to have Rachel out earlier this year to come hang out with us. And we are having our first intersectional arts and music festival on October 12th.
Yay.
It is Mid-Mountain Fest. And we are going to be reclaiming Appalachian murder ballads, doing a lot of really spooky, extremely weird things. There's going to be a sound installation where you lie down and listen to the scientific process of bodily decay interspersed with a narrative about Appalachian death rituals. We'll have a black luthier making a gourd banjo on site and capping off the program with debuting it. I'm really super overwhelmed and will also be singing murder ballads as part of the program.
Incredible. I have so much FOMO. I was going to go, and then I decided to be a responsible adult and not overload my October with the 8-hour train ride to Mid-Mountain. But next year.
We'll lure you out here again.
Yes, absolutely.
Like a siren call.
It's so true.
The siren calls. No, count me in. Listen, you had me at murder ballad.
Great, because I can talk about those for a really stupidly long amount of time. I'm not sure exactly how long this episode
It's true. Don't threaten us with a good time, buddy. It's
good
true. Amazing. Well, we'll definitely remind folks in the show notes and at the end of the episode where they can find more info about, as I was calling it several months ago, the Miss Murder Fest. But AFI will not be present. Very different vibe. That's just how my brain works. But
it's gone through a few different iterations. Feminist Murder Ballad Fest was the working title for a very long time. And we're super grateful to have some support from Mid-Atlantic Arts and the Central Appalachian Living Traditions program there that's helping fund one of our main productions, as well as a cool, weird zine that we'll have on there. And if you want to find out more about the whole thing, midmountain.org/fest. We tried to keep it very simple. Tickets are on sale now, and there are early bird Murder of Crow discounts available through at least the end of the month.
Very exciting. Okay, well,
we're spooky.
Listeners, if you are at all within spitting distance of the Blue Ridge
Natural
Mountains.
Bridge Station, Virginia. I guess I should actually say where that was.
Well, they could have figured it out, but I'm glad that you said it. I can't wait to talk more about that at the end of the show. But right now, let's get into some weird stuff. So, on the weirdest thing I learned this week, we offer up a little tease about a fact or story that we found in the course of reading, writing, reporting, singing murder ballads, etc. Decide which one we just absolutely have to hear more about first. Then, once we've all had time to spin our little science yarns, we reconvene and decide what the weirdest thing we learned this week actually was ish, sort of. Amanda, what's your tease?
Yeah, so my tease is if you took honors English classes, you'll get it. And if you are just a little bookworm, maybe you'll get it. Maybe you'll just know this tease because of the zeitgeist of this book. So my tease is of misandrist lab mice and hating men.
Wow. Wonderful. Perfect. River, what's your tease?
Come round yonder mid-mountain campfire to learn about a creature from the deep. A creature which may be coming to take over a lake or stream or other waterway near you soon and has the amazing power of matriarchal cloning.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay, I love that.
Okay, a compelling tease. I want to talk about a vintage haul that got the internet all in a tizzy about breaking a secret code.
Love it.
Let's see. Where shall we begin? I hate it when guests have really good teases because I promise that guests won't go first.
Uh,
I'll be honest, I want to know what the secret code's about. Well, I cannot resist a puzzle. I'm really easy to please.
I love a puzzle. I love a puzzle and I'm nosy. Like, please tell me the secret.
Okay.
Tell me the goss.
I'll tell you the goss. So this all starts in 2013 when an archaeologist named Sarah Rivers Cofield was at an antique mall
great name for an archaeologist.
Great name.
Yeah.
She was at an antique mall in Maine looking at dresses, not just casual, like vintage dresses. She collected old, like truly antique dresses and handbags as a hobby, which is a great hobby for an archaeologist. I love that. She came across this dress that she clocked as being from the mid 1880s, bought it for $100. Apparently on her blog, she was like, I almost wrote a whole blog post about how I didn't need this dress, but I got it anyway. And then I deleted it because that's silly. But now I'm here to write this other blog post about it, which I'll get to in a second. So she said it was like sort of like the business casual of the day. To our eyes, it looks pretty ornate, but it actually was more just something that a middle class or well-off but not super rich woman would wear for like a nice everyday look. Not a house dress, but not actually very fancy. It had some interesting things about it. She wrote about, how well designed the bustle was. It had a name tag, which she was very excited about. It just said Bennett sewn into the bodice. And she was like, Bennett's such a common name. I almost certainly won't be able to identify this person, but it's just such a nice touch. It connects me.
Is this somehow a Jane Austen costume?
Listen.
This is important to me personally.
Unfortunately, there is no Jane Austen connection here, except for vibes, I guess. So yeah, she bought this dress for $100, took it home, was looking at all the details. One other thing that really excited her about it was that it had a bustle pin in place. And she was like, as an archaeologist, this is very exciting to me because what she thought it was there to do was just to strategically pull up a layer of the overskirt to expose a little bit of a ruffled hem for like a little bit of a cheeky peekaboo moment, a little fashion moment.
Moulin Rouge.
Yeah. Yeah. Very just
show a little
exactly.
ankle.
Yeah. A very demure and mindful, but still, playful fashion moment for the 1880s. But she was saying from an archaeological standpoint, she knew that there was this one Baltimore laundry site in particular where the drainage pipes were, in her words, absolutely clogged with pins, buttons, and other clothing attachments, basically as if the people who were laundering the clothes would put them through this like rough mass washing process, however they were delivered, even if there were removable pins on them. Relatable for anyone who has ever, brought anything to the dry cleaner. And so she was like, this is like those pins. So now I know what some of those pins were used for. A lot of those were probably bustle pins that unfortunately careless ladies left in the bustle when they sent their dresses to be laundered.
I hate when I leave something in yonder bustle.
Yeah, exactly, right. What will future archaeologists learn from things I've left in my bustle? Only time will tell.
Yeah, they're like, another Burt's Bees chapstick?
Yeah, so true.
Crumbs from all the snack foods.
No, literally.
But that wasn't the most interesting thing that she found in this dress. She and her mother were examining the inside seams, like really looking at the construction of the dress. And when it was turned inside out, she found a hidden pocket. Now, pockets, very common in dresses of this era. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. But usually a pocket would be like very easily accessible through a very inconspicuous slit in the overskirt, because of course that would make the pocket functional. But she said this particular pocket, it was totally concealed by the overskirt. You actually would have had to hike up the silk to expose the underskirt. She says, quote, generally disrupt the whole look to get at the pocket. So this seemed like a very hidden pocket. And that, of course, is intriguing. She pointed out that it was possible this had been like a normal pocket that then someone altering the dress just hadn't taken into account and had like kind of tucked it in and sewn it up. Dresses at this time were frequently remade and taken in. Actually, fun fact, the reason that it's so hard to find plus size vintage clothing is not because people didn't used to be fat. It's because people would remake clothes so they would get smaller and smaller as they were remade. So the clothes that are left behind today are the tiny ones, because people would be like, this is the end of the line. We can't make a new thing out of this. Nobody's tinier than this. So I actually love that fact about fabrics and thinking about tailoring through time. It also makes me think also about how many articles of clothing we all sort of collect now through mass consumer culture. I've really tried to switch over entirely to thrifting it's like definitely a thing I did in like high school and college, and then I sort of was like, don't really feel like I have the time or energy to maintain my values. But now I'm back to it. I'm very excited about it. Doing weird line cuts on thrifted clothing for like art market stuff. It's gonna be so much fun.
I'm like, do I love that there's a Shein top here at this here Goodwill? No. But is it in a landfill? Also, no.
So true.
So maybe someone's donated Shein shirt is someone else's treasure, I'm sure.
Well, sometimes, listen, like Shein and those like super, super mass fast fashion places are like actually evil on so many levels.
Yeah, no, totally.
But then also because they're so evil, they get to be so on trend, and also they have better plus size stuff than so many brands who should know better. So anyway, sometimes I'm actually really excited when I find a piece of Shein garbage in a thrift store, because I'm like, listen, the cat's already out of the bag. This can't be a dud, and now I'm gonna wear this cute dress until it falls off my body in tatters.
Exactly. The cat's coming home with me.
So true.
Well, and that's also one of the reasons, like, I love Katie, our fellow Mid-Mountaineer, used their time at Mid-Mountain to create a really free market that still exists, and we have open during our programming. We're just like, stuff, take it. We're not even gonna, like, ask for money. We're just giving it away. Also bring what you can, but sort of mutual aid, general vibe of like letting things exist within an ecosystem of gratitude and sharing, slightly outside of normal capitalism.
Totally.
Hell yeah.
And this is not just like a Mid-Mountain really free market plug. Also, your local Buy Nothing
so
group.
True.
I'm so
we
addicted
love
to
a Buy Nothing group. Ugh, the stories of some of those objects.
Yes.
And that's really what I want, is my new item to me to come with a narrative.
Yeah. Well, this dress sure did. Because when they started looking in that secret little pocket, she found crumpled bits of paper inside. She said it was like paper that had been through the wash, and this is very like thin, translucent old paper. And she smoothed it out, and she's like, this is nonsense. It's just, I can't, what are these words? At first, she thought maybe it was like a writing exercise, like someone was just practicing their penmanship, or it was some kind of to-do list. But then she started to notice some patterns. There were numbers between each line. Lines were marked off with different colors, and there were like weird timestamps.
Crypto is for cryptography.
Yeah, exactly. So she was like, okay, this does seem like it's some kind of code. That's not my jam. I don't decode codes for a living or for fun. I do all this other cool stuff. So she put it up on her blog and was like, listen, what does this mean? Turns out that was not a simple question to answer. And it took a decade for people to figure out what was going on. It actually ended up on some like lists from like amateur crypto bloggers. It was on lists of like the most uncrackable codes. It became known as the silk dress cryptogram. And yeah, several theories emerged quickly and were then dismissed. People were like, was this a war message? But no, the dress was from the 1880s, so it was not from the Civil War. Understandable, people seeing a dress with a bustle and a code being like, war, for sure. Definitely, that's what was going on. And there were also some theories about one that went around was that it had something to do with the orphan train that brought orphans out west. And like people really like
I love
showed
how many sort of like specific historical narratives this is attempting to weave together through theories.
And people like showed their work. You can find blog posts from, between 2013 and 2023 of people being like, here are all of my points of evidence, but nobody claimed to have cracked it because this code just really defied identification. Just to give you an example, I mean, I'll definitely post this on popsci.com/weird and on my Patreon, so you can actually like look at some of the text from the original paper. But like there would be these numbers and timestamps and then like a series of seemingly random words like Bismarck, omit, leafage, buck, bank, Calgary, Cuba, unguard, confute, duck, Fagin, spring, wilderness, lining, one, reading, novice. And yeah, so people tried to identify it as a cipher. And a cipher is where you're actually swapping out letters, like the Enigma machine imitation game. I was about to say the Enigma game. I was like, that's not a thing. But other folks were like, I don't think this is a cipher. There are too many real words in it. So it's probably more of a code. And in fact, a lot of people very reasonably thought it was a telegraph code. Now, code, unlike a cipher, is like there are words that mean other words, as opposed to you're swapping out the letters. And as we've talked about previously on The Weirdest Thing I Learned This Week, the invention of the telegraph was like wild for people. It was huge leap in just how everything worked. And suddenly you could share messages faster than a speeding man on horseback, which really changed the game in so many fields. And it also was very expensive to send messages via telegraph, and the length of the message would determine the cost. So to keep costs low, lots of people developed shorthand. But what's really interesting here is that this was not a case of there being one general shorthand. There were hundreds, if not thousands, of codes. And basically, whatever your like niche industry or community was, you would have a telegraph code book that you agreed on using. And that is what you would use to compose your messages. So people had kind of come around to the idea that this was almost certainly a telegraph code, but like which one? There were so many. And a lot of people tried to figure out which, and it wasn't working out. And then Wayne Chan from the University of Manitoba started exploring. He was, trying to narrow it down. He was searching through a bunch of known telegraph code books. To give you an example of how wild some of these were, one of the ones he shared is that a phrase such as "the crew are all drunk" could be substituted with a code word such as crimping. Crimping, bad. And
Sounds
There-
like a dance craze.
Yeah, it really does.
TikTok.
Yeah.
And yeah, there were so many reasons why somebody could create a new telegraphic code. Law enforcement agencies use them for privacy, but like so did grocers, seed companies, people making movies. And I have a couple of examples to share of just that there's
Please
so
share us your esoteric
spooky.
cuneiforms.
Yeah. So some of the ones I was looking at are like too esoteric. They're not ciphers because they are like relating phrases to a particular word, but a lot of them just use combinations of random letters to make that word. So it's just sort of like you look up the prefix and the suffix to learn what this person is saying to you about your delivery of onions from Ontario or something. But
Which
luckily,
I always want updates about.
yeah, exactly. There are a bunch for laymen, including ones that are specifically for travelers. Like people would sell like a traveler's telegraph code handbook so that while you were traveling, you could send cheap messages to people. So, for example, the word heartburn in one book means forward letters, including telegrams and cables, for me here, care of your correspondence. Or you could say, glorify Wednesday Brownatel. And that would mean engage 2 double bed rooms for Wednesday in Brown's Hotel, London. And then like the individual words, when you look through the same book, like are just so weird. Avarice is short for are you? Avaricious is are you any better? Avenged is are you coming and when? Like just completely random.
My goodness.
Just there's so many words in the English language and you could write so many things that those words could mean. And then just as long as you knew that other people had the same book as you could write a whole essay in your telegram in like 5 words. So long story short, like 10 years have gone by since this archaeologist posted about her beautiful dress. And then Chan from the University of Manitoba decided, I'm gonna dig into which telegraph code it is. And at some point he realized that the style and the structure reminded him of other messages he'd seen that were about the weather. So that gave him a lead, and he called up the archives of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and was able to get his hands on the 1892 U.S. Signals Service Weather Code, which was not quite right, because remember, this was addressed from the 1880s. And it didn't exactly match, but he could tell he was onto something because like 90% of it fit. They hadn't totally changed all the words they used by 1892. And then he was eventually able to get a hold of an 1887 version, and that matched perfectly. So this dress message was in fact a weather report. Maybe not as sexy as some of the other things that people had imagined, but basically, like so many other things, the telegraph had radicalized weather forecasting because this was the first time you could actually share news of the weather faster than the weather could move. So yeah, it made sense that people would be telegraphing around a lot of shorthand about the weather. And like other telegraph codes, they encoded so much information into this. So I'll give you an example. One of those strings of words was Bismarck, omit, leafage, buck, bank. So in this case, Bismarck, straightforward. It's a station name for Bismarck, Dakota Territory in present-day North Dakota. Omit doesn't just refer to the air temperature being 56 degrees Fahrenheit, but also tells you that the barometric pressure was 0.08. And leafage tells you both that the dew point was 32 degrees Fahrenheit and that the observation time was 10 p.m. Buck tells you that the weather is clear with no precipitation and that the wind direction is north. And Bank tells you that the current wind velocity is 12 miles per hour and the sunset is clear. So yeah, they did a lot of work. Those few words.
That is very specific.
Yeah, well, because all of these code books, they would be huge and have just so many variations. And when you look at the weather code books in particular, they would have just like 100 words starting with the letter F that are all variations on, the temperature reading you might get a particular time of night, for example. So we do know that there were lots of weather stations sending around information by telegraph at this time. We also know that it was very unlikely that a woman would be in one of these positions. We do know that there were lots of civilian volunteers working at like other smaller weather stations, basically, but they sent their stuff in by mail. The people doing those like volunteer station work, that wasn't the like up to the minute sending by telegraph. So trying to figure out who this person was and why they had these codes has still proved a tricky aspect of the mystery. The 1888 Signal Service annual report does list several volunteer women, and one of them was a Miss Mary C. Bennett, who was in Illinois at the time. But again, she would have been sending in her reports by mail. So one potential explanation is that she also worked as a telegraph operator, which was an acceptable job for women at the time. No one's been able to confirm this, but it's possible that this woman who owned this dress was both a volunteer weather person and a professional telegraph operator, and maybe like, you know, wanted to play around with the telegraph codes for the weather. But all of that is totally speculative because we don't even know that the Bennett who owned this dress was the Bennett who volunteered with the Weather Service. Again, it was a very common name, and a tag being in a handmade dress doesn't mean that a person named Bennett even was wearing it at the time that these codes were put in. We also don't know like why they would be hidden since they were basically just throwaway scraps. I do like the point that the archaeologist made that it's totally possible that an accessible pocket was turned inaccessible by an alteration at some point. That like makes a lot of sense to me. The guy who did the research figuring out that these were weather codes did point out, interestingly, that the date of her weather observations corresponds with Mary Bennett's birthday, which like to me, again, this is all just like totally storytelling. It's totally speculative. But to me, I can imagine, you know, a girl who's interested in the weather, who does this volunteer work, who maybe also is interested in this new telegraph technology, whether she works as a telegraph operator, maybe one of her friends does, being like, oh, how fun. I'm going to learn how to write these codes. And then being like, it's my birthday. I'm writing the weather for my birthday.
Oh, that's really cute.
Yeah. It's just, listen, girls learning skills, girls having hobbies, let them live, you know?
Yeah, it's like all women care about are the moon and the weather.
And dresses.
And dresses.
When they have pockets.
Yeah, it's just, they have pockets. They keep secrets in them. A dangerous, slippery slope. So yeah, that's everything we know right now about the mysterious silk dress cryptograph. I love how much this stumped people and how simple the explanation was at the end of the day when the right person came along to suss it out. And I love that it's still mysterious. Like people, you know, if it had turned out to be like war secrets, people would be like, mystery solved. She was a spy. but they're like, the weather? What was she doing?
Not her girl hobby.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the story for today.
And I bet the archaeologist being an archaeologist, like all of like the bustle pin and this note, I'm sure, again, this is just speculation, I'm sure all of those are in like pristine condition.
Oh, I'm sure.
Still. Thanks to her own girl hobby.
So true.
Collecting and preserving potentially artifacts.
Yeah.
Girls love their trinkets, and that also includes dresses from the late 1800s.
So
and
true.
bustle pins.
Again, only if they include pockets.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with some more facts. Happy sweater weather to all who observe. I certainly do. But shifting your wardrobe from summer to fall can sometimes be tricky. Luckily, Quince offers timeless and high-quality items without making you blow your budget. Quince has cashmere sweaters starting at $50, pants for every occasion, washable silk tops, and so much more. And the best part is that all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. That's because Quince partners directly with top factories, so they cut out the cost of the middleman and pass the savings on to us. But most importantly, Quince says they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices, plus premium fabrics and finishes. The oversized cashmere cardigan I got from Quince is finally getting the amount of wear it deserves. It's such a cozy, stylish, and well-made piece, especially given how affordable it was. Make switching seasons a breeze with Quince's high-quality closet essentials. Go to quince.com/weirdest for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/weirdest to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/weirdest. Okay, we're back. And Amanda, tell me about some misandrous mice.
Absolutely. So, for context, Popular Science recently published a mouse story that kind of went semi-viral. It was about the dye in Doritos making mice transparent. So I already had mice on the mind, and this particular study came up on my TikTok For You page, and I called it serendipity. So this particular TikTok was about a 2014 study that was published in Nature Methods called Olfactory Exposures to Males, Including Men, Causes Stress and Related Analgesia in Rodents, which, translated to regular person speak, is rodents think men are smelly and stressful.
Understandable.
The stress that men cause these mice while simply existing can dampen pain responses and affects the rodent's behavior, and thus can potentially mess up the result of animal studies. When 59% of the animals used for experience are mice, that's kind of a big deal, right? But Amanda, does this mean these lab mice are in pain? They are very much in pain, but they are not showing it, which is bad. The lab rats are not expressing their pain, which can skew results. Because there is something called the mice grimace scale, which is
similar to like my resting face scale.
Yeah. They use it for babies. If you have a pet and you sort of see them hiding a lot, like that's very similar. So the mice grimace scale, it's from 0 to 2. And 0 means that they are not showing this particular sign of stress, which can be related to where the ears are positioned, to what the cheeks are doing, to what the nose is doing, to what the whiskers is doing. 1 is they're kind of doing it, and then 2 is they're doing it. Those cheeks bulging, those whiskers flat against their face, the eyes, they're closed. The mice are miserable, which you report, and then you go, the mice are miserable after doing this. Mm-hmm. But this study found that the men working with the mice would stress them out, and they wouldn't show pain, which affects the results of whatever they're studying on the mice. So the lore of this study is also really interesting. The authors decided to test something that had previously been sort of anecdotally reported, sort of like a little open secret amongst lab researchers themselves. So people in labs were in meetings talking to each other, saying that rodent pain response was smaller when their handler was in the room. So to test this group of researchers measured the response of mice and rats to an injection in their ankle, either in the presence of different experimenters or while alone in an empty room. So in the empty room case, the experimenters gave the little injection and then left the room. The mice and the rats showed a decrease in pain response of about 40% when a man remained in the room. And a 40% decrease is a big number. It's a big portion of not accurate results happening. And it wasn't just the presence of men that bothered the mice. Like someone wearing a t-shirt previously worn by a man bothered them. being near bedding from a man's bed, male armpit secretion samples also had the same effect. And it also,
So it's really sounded like a musk situation.
yeah, it was they were like, man musk, hate it. Male rats, cats, dogs, and guinea pigs also caused the same response, which is just all the mice were like, no men, minus my male cage mates.
Right.
They're my friends and they do not stress me out. So the exposure to men caused the mice to secrete a stress hormone called corticosterone. And because of that, they were so stressed about being around men that they hid their pain. They found that the presence of a woman did not cause the mice distress and actually countered the effect of a male presence like an antidote to a poison, which is like, all right, I'm with my girlies. We're good.
Yeah.
A lot of layers to the messaging coming out of this study.
Yeah.
You know,
And
when the space is full of she's, theys, and gays, it's just different.
It's going to be a good time. We're going to make friendship bracelets. So this also wasn't like a once and done sort of phenomena. The researchers themselves replicated their results in an open field test where they just sort of like put the mice in a box and see how they wander. Some Swedes collaborating on the study replicated the experiments in their own lab and got the same results. The researchers also reanalyzed data from past studies, and they found that the mice tested by men showed lower pain sensitivity by those tested by women. So, for example, they did a very similar test where instead of injecting the mice in the ankle, they tested pain sensitivity to hot water. And the mice were also very stressed and also didn't show pain. So what do we do with this crazy phenomena, right? Like, mice are like the animal that people do experiments on. And if a large portion of these little babies aren't showing accurate results, how is that going to then apply to humans, right? So this is a study from 2014, so I'm sure a decade later we have maybe changed our practices, maybe we've banned men from the lab, but the research overall should have encouraged scientists to include gender as a variable when working with rodents in an experiment, or at least, you know, do some deeper study on the relationship between experimenter and lab animal.
Yeah, I remember when this came out and it was like in the midst of a bunch of studies about various problems caused by imbalance in research in terms of like, you know, the lab animals are more likely to be male because like female lab animals are too complicated. And, you know, the researchers skewing white and male and how that changes research. And I remember this coming out and being like, oh, yet another thing. Great. Even just the man funk is messing with our, it's almost as if things would just be better across the board if a more diverse group of people were doing the research so that we were less likely to get skewed results.
Exactly. And we would have just happier little mice.
That's true.
Doing Ring Around the Rosie, playing hopscotch because they're not stressed out by some guys
Just
talking
by some
about
guy.
sports.
Just some guy.
Very specific guy, just guys in general.
Just any guy. Even if the mice are talking about sports, they're like, this guy stinks, literally. We cannot tell him our mice sports score.
I don't know enough about sports ball to contribute to this part of the conversation, folks.
No,
I'm gonna
same,
acknowledge
honestly.
that that's not part of my personal repertoire of.
But also,
conversational
just
topics.
imagine like the mice and the rodents who like are scurrying around a stadium, and then they just all convene together to talk about the game, and the refs making a bad call. Just warms my heart.
Adorable. All right, we're going to take one more break and then we'll be back with one more fact. Okay, we're back. And River, talk to me about our new matriarchal overlords.
Yeah, so I think this is a really good pivot from our last conversational topic about how just the presence of men makes things wonky sometimes. So imagine you are in Germany. It is 1995. You pick up some crawfish for your aquarium. And you keep seeing that you keep getting like more and more crawfish over and over and over again. Turns out you have begun the epicenter of the marbled crayfish expansion, which I believe are going to be our crustacean overlords. And let me tell you why. I'm going to be reading here from a 2015 article, The Marbled Crayfish as a Paradigm for Saltational Speciation by Autopolyploidy and Parthogenesis in Animals. The parthogenic all-female marbled crayfish is a novel research model and potent invader of freshwater ecosystems. It is a triploid descendant of the sexually reproducing slaw crawfish, Procamberus phalanx, but its taxonomic status remained unsettled. By crossbreeding experiments and parentage analysis, we show here that marbled crayfish and P. phalanx are reproductively separated. Both crayfish copulate readily, suggesting that the reproductive barrier is set at the cytogenic rather than the behavioral level. But analysis of complete mitochondrial genomes of the marbled crayfish from laboratory lineages and wild populations demonstrates genetic identity and indicates a single origin. All of these crayfish are the same. They're all a clone coven from the deep, and by the deep I mean like a mystery pet store in Germany, which I also love as the origin story of like
That is perfect.
Our future crustacean overlords, she overlords, lordesses. But so excited about these folks. They are slowly being banned across, like, as a pet store thing across the United States. Many states already outlaw them, but like they've kind of taken over in a lot of freshwater ecosystems in Germany, other parts of mainland Europe, as well as Madagascar. And there's like these movements not like to take advantage of that and use them as a dietary supplement for protein, like both in Germany and Madagascar. So they're not only like these they're these clones, and because of the way that they work, they outcompete and sometimes carry infections that the local dad or crawfish populations are like vulnerable to. They replace them, and then you've just got like what some restaurants were calling the Berlin lobster, which is like just this giant cloned matriarchal crawdads who once again I believe will take over.
Wow.
That is so funny. I wonder, so how did they get from pet store to lake?
So a thing that you're not supposed to do with your aquarium critters is dump them into your local ecosystems. And yet, that is a thing that people do all of the time. And that seems to be the likely situation here, is that...
And perhaps especially if they're multiplying at an exponential rate.
Yeah.
Yeah, even though they seem to be in single-sex tanks, just like creating... enough crayfish to take over the world.
Wow.
Aquarium by aquarium.
That's incredible.
Aquarium by aquarium. So even though they're in a same-sex aquarium, it's like a bunny situation where it's like,
like that is my understanding.
Surprise!
Is that, like, suddenly there will just be more of them because they're just laying cloned eggs of themselves that like over and over again. And I think like it's kind of a fun, weird, spooky thing to think about, that like we're having these like biological clones that are being so aggressive and good at taking over new spaces that humans have just decided to like live with them and try to figure out how to harvest them for their protein.
It's like spotted lanternflies, but instead of people telling you to step on them, it's like, no, actually eat them.
Yeah, pretty much.
I've lived in places where crawfish are, you eat them. They are just little lobster guys, really. But they are also giant bugs. As a wise man once said, shrimps is bugs. It's a very fine line.
Lobsters is bugs.
It's a very fine line. Actually, and speaking of Germany, my husband's from basically Denmark, so far North Germany. And in that part of the Great North, they're very into these tiny, tiny shrimp. They really like making soup out of them. And it's a very rich, like almost lobster bisque-esque soup. And it's delicious, but they also will eat the shrimp in like a cold salad, a lot of cold salads for breakfast. And the issue is that they're very bug looking. Just their size and plumpness does not look like a shrimp to me. It looks like something else. And I think that is really that is the issue when it comes to eating a crawdad. They dance so nimbly on that line between
they're like a Jiminy
sea
Cricket
creature
little tap dance
bug.
close to bugs.
Yeah, and I've eaten insects before, so I don't fundamentally have a problem with that. But it is, it's something that you got to wrap your head around before you go to the seafood boil. So, but listen. If you can't beat them, eat them.
The seafood oil appears to be in Germany a place known as Holy Crab, which does them. And like, I'm definitely looking at one of the scientific studies that includes pictures of options of how to serve the crayfish.
Yeah,
so
that's so good.
Therefore, utilization of marbled crayfish as a source for dietary protein in Chitlin. Example A, marbled crayfish tails with herbs, fried in butter. Marbled crayfish tail meat on avocado mousse. I'm also a vegetarian, so I'm not the target audience for this. I don't eat any of the bugs, but that's in line with my other I don't eat any of the moving things, really, standard for my own personal diet.
It's reasonable. Yeah. Yeah. My point, in fact, is if you're going to eat one kind of crawly thing, why not another?
Why not another?
And if you're not going to eat any crawly things, that's fair.
Look,
as a pescatarian, I'm like, the windows are open.
The only way for us to defeat our future matriarchal cloning overlords is through consumption, it seems. So there are some people already working on it, as I said, including in Germany and Madagascar. Assuredly, more people will be working on it in the United States soon.
When they eventually swim over.
Well, and like, they're already being or have been previously sold as like aquarium pets. So I'm just thinking it's gonna happen somewhere or somehow. I remember reading
someone's
a while
gonna
back
flush
about a case of folks being persecuted for like just maintaining because they're invasive, maintaining a tank of them because they were using them as like the feeders for all of their other aquarium pets. Because it's sort of like, a continuous supply of little juicy bug things.
Yeah, which, in theory, it's fine as long as they're staying in their tank. But as you and I have discussed, they're wily. You have some crayfish at Mid-Mountain and they get out. And I did ecology fieldwork as an undergrad involving basically catching and counting crayfish. And they're little trickster demons.
They will climb a thing if you give them a thing. Recommend lids. They're all up in yonder river near us. We love hanging out and sort of like seeing them underneath rocks when we go swimming from the space. So,
but yeah,
nice.
Hubris to think that you can keep an invasive crawfish from exiting your home and getting into the waterway is pure hubris.
Yeah, no, we're I estimate 500 years away from them enslaving us. So,
from full crawfish saturation.
I'm trying to get on their good side now. That's why I'm singing their praises and or suggesting that people who aren't me eat them.
Wise. Well, speaking of yonder river, would you remind our listeners where they can find more information about Mid-Mountain and the incredible Murder Ballad Festival you have coming up?
Yeah, so you can find us at midmountain.org. If you go to midmountain.org/fest, you can find out way more about it. We've got so many cool things happening. We have more than a dozen musical performances across 2 stages, printmaking workshops, weird art installations, and just an opportunity to hang out and experience a kind of collaborative community that reflects on a lot of the weird stuff we've all done together here at Mid-Mountain, but also while specifically reclaiming murder ballads, because we're all about spooky Appalachia, it turns out. And we've got some great folks. We've got Clover Lynn, who's a really fabulous regional sort of queer gothic bluegrass musician, the band South for Winter. We've got Dr. Dina Jennings, who's going to be doing the Gourd Banjo Creation Workshop on site, which I'm so pumped about. I'm exhausted a little bit just thinking about it, but also so excited. It's coming up on October 12th, and it's an all-day thing. Grounds are going to open to the public at 10 a.m. and close at 9 p.m. It's such a weird, fun, spooky place, and I'm excited to have so many people kind of engaging in creative reclamation across the space with us.
Amazing. Well, I definitely hope that some of our listeners make it out because I sure wish I could.
The Weirdest Thing I Learned This Week is produced by all of our hosts, including me, Rachel Feltman, along with Jess Bodie, who also serves as our audio engineer and editor extraordinaire. Our theme music is by Billy Cadden. Our logo is by Katie Beloff. If you have questions, suggestions, or weird stories to share, tweet us at weirdest_thing. Thanks for listening, weirdos.